Hello, I'm Volodymyr Teteruk, and it's the Persona Grata program. And today we'll discuss an interesting topic in connection with digital technology and geopolitics. Meet the guest of my program, Louis Pétiniaud, who is working in Ukraine now and who is a specialist in two interesting fields, digital technology and geopolitics. Louis, frankly speaking, it was quite unexpected for me to hear about it, and I can see no connection between these two spheres. Please tell something. What is it? What is the base where two these spheres, absolutely different spheres, are moving to one another?
The basis is that I'm from a French research center, which is called GEOD, and we work at the crossroads between geopolitics as a traditional field of science in social sciences, and, well, let's say the digital revolution that started a few decades ago now. And geopolitics is a study of power rivalries on territories, any given territories. It can be at a global scale, at a national scale, at a very smaller scale. And digital technologies have permeated in all areas of life. So digital is everywhere now. And we can understand better the geopolitical conflicts that we see in the world with the help of digital technology for gathering data. For instance, it's a case of, well, I can take Ukraine as an example, with the help of OSINT, for instance, or open source intelligence, like people filming on the ground in conflicted territories. And on the other way around, we can study the cyberspace, let's say, so space is produced by the interconnection of devices around the world as a territory itself. So this kind of territory, such as social media, for instance, like we can understand Twitter or Telegram or Facebook as their own specific territories where people are fighting to control narratives, to control spaces, to occupy spaces. And we can look at it in these two ways, but we also study the physical elements of the digital, because the digital is often thought of as something without territory, something like above space, above our territorial space. And what we understand is that the internet is not at all above the territories. It's data centers, it's cables, it's submarine cables, it's satellites sometimes, it's your own computer, your own smartphone. And all of those are on the ground somewhere on a given territory. And so we also study how these specific elements of infrastructure are conflictual, how some people are trying to control them, how some people are trying to destroy them or to buy them. So you have a lot of other different types of conflicts that go on to what makes cyberspace and what makes the digital sphere.
Speaking about Russian-Ukrainian war here, what can we proceeding from digital technology? What they help us understand if we are talking about this war? What new pages can we open using this technology and these new methods of researching?
Well, the war in Ukraine has opened a lot of doors in terms of, and also has assembled almost all the things that we knew to be conflictual about cyberspace or about digital technologies. And also new doors are being opened, something that we did not foresee specifically. I can take a few examples. For instance, there are like old things like propaganda, disinformation, misinformation, things that were known before and that have been around in Ukraine for a few years now. So that we know of. There have been also conflicts about new occupied territories, whereas in Russia is subverting all means of telecommunications and putting all the traffic in those occupied territories, and they are routing them towards Russia. So there are also setting up an annexation throughout the digital world by being able to control better the flows of information, being able to spy on people. This is something that we have witnessed in Crimea and Donbass before, but now it is being applied to both mobile and broadband fixed telecommunications network in all new occupied territories. There's also an example of cyber warfare, which is also a well-known issue before, but you have a lot of different new things that are happening in Ukraine right now and that were happening a few months ago as well. So the number of cyber attacks has never been that high in history in a given place. You have phenomena like the IT army of Ukraine, which is a very broad new thing to study, to understand, and which brings also new questions in terms of law, for instance, because people who are fighting in the IT army of Ukraine, for instance, in Poland or in Czech Republic, are in a way fighting for Ukraine as a state and could harm at some point the enemy of Ukraine, which is Russia. So in terms of international law, we cannot yet fully say if those are attackers really or are armed forces for working for Ukraine or not. And so this brings a lot of new questions because they are not in Ukraine, they are not fighting specifically for Ukraine, or at least not officially. But Ukraine is trying to, I don't have my word, the Ukrainian ministry is trying to more or less control them, or at least to drive them in some direction. And this is also something that is quite new. And also the war in Ukraine has driven new geopolitical movements around the world. Russia, who has been focused a lot on trying to send disinformation in Europe for a number of years now, is now clearly moving its targets and working more and more in Africa, for instance, in that area. Specifically with the companies of Mr. Yevgeny Prigozhin. So you have a lot of new things happening that either are happening in Ukraine or about Ukraine, or that the open war in Ukraine has started.
You have pointed out a number of things, important things that has some influence on history and on changes on the world. We say that revolution in mind, it's what helps the history to develop faster. And what can we say about the digital technology? Are they revolutionary, and what they bring about in geopolitics? Will geopolitics concentrate still on territories, or they, I mean representatives from geopolitics, will take into account well, this digital aspect of human beings, not only territories? What do you feel? What can you say?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase? I'm not sure I understood.
I mean influence of technologies, of digital technologies on geopolitics will change fundamental principles of geopolitics. Will those who are adherent of old school of geopolitics change their mind and not thinking of territories, well thinking about something else?
Well, this is a complicated question. In fact, one of the questions at the core of what we are doing is that is the cyberspace, is the digital revolution fundamentally new? And is it really revolutionizing the way we are working on geopolitical conflicts? Well, the easy answer is yes and no, but actually a lot of things that were brought by the digital revolutions are just something that expands previous states of affairs. For instance, if we take a look at the influence that Russia has on infrastructures in Ukraine, you can make comparison almost with the gas wars of the 2000s between Russia and Ukraine, well, or by Russia on Ukraine. Disinformation is not a new phenomenon. It's been going around since some millennia now. So a lot of things that we think are new are not that fundamentally unseen. However, it always brings like a new element to how we understand things. For instance, like even the hackers from Poland who works for the IT army of Ukraine, etc. Well, it can be compared to a volunteer fighter going into another states, or even going to the enemy states and doing something. So it's not necessarily fundamentally new, but it certainly brings new light into specific conflicts, and sometimes makes the image more fuzzy and more blurry. So that's why it takes a lot of time to really include fundamentally cyberspace into our very geographic way of looking at things. So really about the territory. Sometimes it's a bit difficult to include those new things, but fundamentally I don't think it's brand new.
Proceeding from your experience, what can you say about the future of Ukraine under the context of developing digital technologies? How can we evaluate Ukrainian potential in this field, and how can we, if we can do some forecast after the war, the speed with which Ukrainian industry, Ukrainian society, and Ukrainian, of course, high technologies will develop?
Well, that's obviously forecasting, so a very complicated question. But
of course,
a few things I might. Well, first of all, there is one obvious thing: is that the IT sector of Ukraine is one of the most the fastest in the world, and even more so in Europe. So obviously, I think the IT sector will continue to rise, and maybe the war will also bring back the brain drain that was happening before in Ukraine. So a lot of engineers going away for better options at work, but a lot of engineers stayed in Ukraine and were making the market really flourishing. I think it's going to continue that way, and I think the government is likely and is even already supporting more and more those kind of initiatives and this sector in Ukraine. So of course, DIA is the most renowned example of something that is inspired by former examples such as Estonia in terms of e-governments, but which is going even further and which is intending to going even further than it is now. So this is the kind of things that could not only be a great driver for Ukraine IT sector, but also to help bring people to inspire other countries in the world as well. And then I think there is something important to the regulations of telecoms, but that's actually my work here, is to understand clearly that sector, to understand the regulation of it and how the whole sector deals with the war. So I will not say too much about it because it's a work in progress, and I will publish something later, but I think now the market is quite very decentralized. It's not that easy to observe, and I've heard about initiatives to strengthen the sovereignty of Ukraine in terms of data hosting, in terms of data routing, in terms of all the infrastructures that are needed to have a flourishing sector in that area, and also a secure sector in that area. So I think all of those will be working to strengthen the sovereignty of Ukraine in that way. And of course, in terms of defense, Ukraine has proven, with the help of some countries and companies, obviously, but has proven to be a really resistant and resilient country in the face of cyber attacks. And this, much like Estonia in 2007, after the attacks again on their own networks, which sparked the creation of the NATO Center of Excellence for Cyber in Tallinn. I think Ukraine will become a new center of, well, not excellence for NATO, at least not now, but a new center of research, a new center of collaboration, cooperation in between actors from the cybersecurity sector, because a lot of lessons will be, and since 2014 it's already the case, but a lot of lessons will be drawn from the Ukrainian case in the following years.
Louis, thank you for joining the program. Thank you
very
for
much.
taking part. Well, it was Louis Pétiniaud, a specialist who deals with digital technology in connection with geopolitics. He was a guest in the program Persona Grata. And I, Volodymyr Teteruk, wish you good luck and say you goodbye.